Alright everyone, hello and welcome back to Galactic Reviews. This week we're going over the brand new Barbie movie. So let's just get right into it. This was probably the most obscure, off-the-wall Barbie movie I think I've ever seen, and I haven't watched that
Pause.
many Barbie movies.
I was about to be like, dude, you
So
watched a
is
lot of
this, in general, I'm trying to figure out what to say for this movie. Really difficult besides uh I think the only saving grace for this movie was just all of the Kens breaking out in song constantly or wanting to fight. Um, that is literally the only thing I remember from this movie. Probably the only thing quite a few people remember from this movie are just the Kens, specifically the their final battle. I think that
Mhm.
was probably the biggest highlight out of this movie was just that one scene. I'm trying to remember anything else about this movie that was interesting, and I just can't. This movie is very specific for a specific type of or a specific niche of people. Um, it's not for everyone, I don't think. I think it's I I don't I don't really know what else to say about this movie besides um definitely not a Barbie movie except by name only, and that's pretty much all I have for this movie. So, with that, I'll give this movie a, you know what? Because the Kens, I'll give it a 2 out of 10. Yeah, that's it. So, whoever wants to take the floor may.
All right, since Andrew is gonna go last, I won't take up too much. I won't try to take up too much time. I'll save that for more later when we get into somewhat of debate if we want to. But needless to say, I did not like this movie. I'm not a Barbie fanatic like Zach. I have not watched anything Barbie content wise. So besides Toy Story 3, I don't know what that would be considered, but
I mean, it has Barbie in it, but it's not.
and Ken. So that was your favorite part. Yeah.
I mean, fair. It does have Ken.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with this movie, I would say. It's mainly, it's a very, no getting around it, it's a very hardcore feminist movie. So if you were hoping not to get a whole bunch of political stuff in a movie, well, this is probably not the movie for you. This was, like Zach said, this is made for a very niche audience, more so a very much a millennial female audience that is sort of getting into the real world now, that grew up with Barbie, I would say, would probably be about who this audience was or what this movie was made for. Yeah, a lot of problems with this movie. I did not like a whole bunch of things. It's very obvious what they're doing almost every other 5 seconds. You end up, the most memorable thing about this is not even Barbie, it is Ryan Gosling's Ken. And a lot of people like his character because of what we've seen of just from how he acts and how he's very much the charismaticness of Ryan Gosling as Ken has was done really well. Also, he's treated like a second-rate citizen along with all the other Kens, kind of just showing you how it's there's a whole bunch of problems we could go into, and I'll wait until later. But lot of problems with this film. One saving grace is probably Ryan Gosling, and that is sad considering how much of a cast or a starring cast there is. There's Will Ferrell is in this movie, John Cena is in this movie, um,
I missed
Michael
John
Cera is
Cena.
in this
Where
movie.
where
He
was
was the
John Cena?
mermaid
I missed
dude.
it.
He was the
Oh yeah,
mermaid
that's
dude.
right. No, I do
Yeah,
remember. I just completely
there's
missed that.
yeah, there was a it
I
had
don't
a
see him with long hair often.
yeah. I was like, wait, is that John Cena? Well, Zach, to be fair, you really can't see him, so
Fair enough.
But yeah, I didn't like this film. Very much could have been somewhat like Elf with the premise that they went with, and was very much, instead of it being like a fun sort of movie like Elf was, where it's a character that's figment or like a somewhat a figment of imagination going into like the real world, something along that aspect. It turned into a preachy movie about hating men. So yeah, didn't very much care for it. And considering that this is the same director who is going to be directing Chronicles of Narnia, I'm not looking forward to any of that stuff. So for a lot of people, this was more so a precursor of what we're going to get with Chronicles of Narnia. So I'm going to give it the exact same rank as Zach. I'll give it a 2 out of 10. I was trying to think of it being lower, but nothing can be as low as Captain Marvel. So this was still very, very bad and very poorly done.
All right. Well, I'm going to come out and say I completely, wholeheartedly disagree with you both extremely strongly. This is
We
my
figured.
favorite movie of the year I've seen so far. I'm going to right off the bat give it a 9 out of 10. I don't see it as political in any aspect. The niche
Which part?
demographic
Okay,
that
I'll let
it
you go. My bad. My apologies.
niche
I'll let you keep going.
demographic that it is geared towards is 50% of the population being women. I completely disagree with that. It is men hating. I think it is more of a coming of age story. If something is pandering and pushing a feminist agenda, that brings them to mind politics. And this movie really didn't touch on politics. This was a coming of age story and what it means to be a woman in modern society. The same way war movies are what it means to be a man in modern society. We saw coming of age in terms of both men and women in this film. Ken being a subservient role is very metaphorical and reminiscent of how Ken and Barbie starting the movie were meant to represent young boys and girls and how they interact with the world. And that's the whole point of what the Barbie time was. This movie was a social commentary on growing up and passing over from naive adolescence into the realities of how the real world works. Doesn't push any agenda in my mind as far as equal rights, crossing the wage gap, women power. It's empowering to women in the fact that it's a movie made for women and it's supposed to help with their self-confidence. I absolutely cannot wait till my younger sister is old enough to watch this movie. I think it is an incredible movie for young women, preteens, young teens to watch. It is as empowering to young women as it is as Saving Private Ryan is to men. And I don't think it neglects men at all. I think this was incredibly acted on both sides. I think the set design was incredible. The soundtrack was incredibly imaginative and creative with how it interacted with the story. The great cast. And I definitely think this one could be a Oscar nomination, but in several categories.
I'm still trying to figure out roughly where it's not pushing a women's agenda because we have the equals rights at currently, and
Well,
then
tell me
wait,
what the agenda they're pushing is.
Okay,
well,
and
Women's
then
agenda
let
is
there's
me
too
let
broad.
me let me let me finish real quick. I mean, we have it where only women vote in Barbie Land, no Kens. And then even at the end of the movie, it's still only women vote and no Kens.
Huh?
well, they say they're going to change everything and treat them like good. I guess they say they're going to treat them like people. That was the implication, and then they ask for a seat in the Senate, which is kind of like just not even take over, just one seat, and they say no. So I mean, that's them basically saying you still don't get rights.
This is
So
still
I
Barbie
mean,
Land, where the
I'm
it's not the real world where they're made equally. They're not made equally. It's Barbie and Ken. Ken
yeah,
was
but
made as the entire yeah. The society is Barbie Land. It's not a reflection of the real world. It's a reflection of Barbie as a merchandise.
Yeah, but I also thought like towards the latter half of the movie, it was that they were trying to because Ken was changing it to one way, and I thought they were changing it back to Barbie Land, but at this point, since they had seen a lot, they were switching it back, but also going to kind of implement like a few rules to help mentally stabilize Ken's.
Yeah, I mean, they were still representing the toys that they were. They didn't break out of the stereotypes of Dr. Barbie and lawyer Barbie and President Barbie. They didn't break out of those, and so the Kens weren't going to break out of Beach Ken. They still had their personalities and all of that intact. They didn't want to lead.
The women or the men didn't want to lead?
The men.
They liked it when it was patriarchy.
Yes, because they had a flawed idea of what patriarchy
No. Ken, literally, his whole thing is him in his long rant, his speech, is he felt wonderful and felt like a person after somebody asked him the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was treated like a second-class citizen. And they still go back to treat him like a second-class citizen at the end of the film.
He finds his own individuality at the end of the film. He was reliant on Barbie's attention for his self-worth. And the reason he lashed onto patriarchy is because he thought that that's where he could get his self-worth from. And he realized that was his whole arc, was that wasn't the case, is that his self-worth comes from himself and nowhere else. And Zach looks like he's doing research.
Who is Ken really? The history of world's most important. This is on CNN.
That still doesn't change the fact that they still treat all the Kens like second-rate citizens.
Because they are. They were made to prop up the Barbies and to give
but the whole thing is about him being equal. The whole thing is about him trying to be equal. They say they're going to treat him like equal, then they lie. And these are treated like the heroes.
The whole point of this movie is a societal commentary on what it means to be a woman in modern society. That's the whole point. Everything else is just a device.
The 20-minute speech that the woman cries about when she's a mother and says that men are the reason for every single problem that they have, despite the fact that the film decides to show every man is incompetent and stupid.
Because it's all from the perspective of Barbies, women. This is how they feel like their life is. This movie is to validate the female experience.
You know what? That might explain why none of this movie makes sense.
Because you're not a woman.
Really? I couldn't tell.
Well, you liked it, so I guess.
Boom. Roasted.
I've liked it, but I have little sisters, and I know the struggles they're going to go through.
I have cousins.
I've had girlfriends.
Okay, you got me there. Look.
On the flip side, I can undersee why people are having issues with this film. But from the point of view that I have with the interactions that I have had in life, I don't agree with those conclusions.
I'm also looking here for careers of Ken dolls. There are important figures for Ken dolls. The businessman, boxer, astronaut, baseball player. Where were they during
Cheerleader Ken.
Yeah.
Golf caddy Ken. Schoolboy Ken.
Beach Ken 2023. That's when he came out.
Beach
so
came out 2023?
Yeah, Beach came out 2023. So that's the newest addition to Ken.
That's not surprising, actually.
I wonder if he came out specifically for this movie.
Yes.
Probably.
And the Barbie. What was that Barbie? The
stereotypical Barbie? Was Margot Robbie's Barbie, I think? But yeah, you can't argue that, despite it being the thing that says this, even with you saying that this is from a perspective of a woman, it still shows men as incompetent and completely, let's not argue, stupid. Which, if that was done in a movie with it being the opposite, and you then saying it's a man's perspective, this would be ridiculed by the masses.
Yeah, and we see that in movies all the time. That doesn't diminish their quality.
Which ones, if they're all the time, can you say which ones? I want to write them down so I can watch those.
There is a term in the film industry, and it is now escaping my mind. Oh.
Pedophiles? Because I don't watch
No,
Sound of
there's
Freedom.
a
Oh no.
term for a movie. There's a term, it's a specific kind of test you can give a movie for how well written the female characters are.
Okay, if it's
Um,
the Bechtel test was a
the
joke.
Bechdel
It was
test.
written down as a joke, and then it was taken seriously.
Bechdel
You can
test?
go look this up. It was
Yes,
written
but
down
it
as a
but
joke.
it does bring to light. Yes, but it did show an issue in how movies and shows are written, how very 2D female characters are written in a lot of pieces of media. If you
It
look
was
at almost any war movie, all the guys are these macho men, and the women are just nurses there to be pinnacles of innocence.
duh, because it's a
I
war
got you.
movie.
Hold on.
Exactly.
Not all war movies are like that, though.
No, not all war
No,
movies.
and not all movies are war
I was trying
movies.
to think. I can't think of names of.
I didn't say all movies.
Also, most war movies are based like up of World War One, World War Two, and around that time era. And time era wise, that fits their like historical roles. I mean, that's mostly the jobs they were given because I mean, women weren't able to go to war until what year was it?
I think it was sometime after. I think it's sometime after Vietnam was when they were like
It was
letting.
after Vietnam, but I don't remember when after
Which is why I
Vietnam it
laughed when in
was.
the A-Team movie they made a woman a colonel or a general above, like that was ordering all the A-Team around. I thought that was funny because they're in Vietnam. But
Oh, that's true.
I like all the other movies that they decide to make. Like, hey, these are toxic masculine films, like Godfather, Rambo, Rocky. Going to the gym is seen as like a very toxic male thing. Go doing a
I've
fist
actually
bump.
never heard that sentiment about those movies.
No, they show
I was
them.
gonna
Like
say, I
it's
mean,
not. It's not
Godfather I
sentiment.
watched. Godfather doesn't seem like a very, Godfather is a very, I don't see where it like fits on like masculinity. I just think that's a movie for a,
Well,
um,
first off, if I'm looking into it and if I'm
I
basing
can't
it
think
off
of
of the way that,
gangster.
well, yeah, and it's very much the same way as men and women have rules in that film. Also, it's one of the movies that one of the Kens is watching, and that the Barbie is that is somewhat attributed, at least according to the film, as somewhat a patriarchal film, at least if not a toxic male film. And they also have in the gym Rocky, Rambo, and I forget the other one. Oh yeah, they also make a reference to Top Gun movies with the volleyball scene, very roughly, and saying that that's a toxic myth film, or at least a patriarchal film. So I mean,
So all of those are playing off of stereotypes. The movies are playing off of gym bro stereotypes. Not gym bro, sorry, film bro stereotypes. Where the stereotypical film bro is, you haven't seen The Godfather, you haven't seen Fight Club. Oh, you just don't like Fight Club because you just don't get it. Same thing with like American Psycho. Like the stereotypical memed film bro like idolizes these films, and anyone who doesn't like it just doesn't get it. That's what they're playing.
Yeah, he does have
that's
a
only
point
with
with that one.
Godfather.
No, no,
It's Godfather, Fight
no,
Club, and
that's
American
also with,
Psycho, or the
No,
Golden
I'm
Three.
saying they only reference Godfather as that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
But a lot of the Ken things that they were playing off of, so it's a very universal experience for many women of being like having guitar played at you, having their favorite guy film put on immediately, and then they over explain it through the entire film. I've been guilty of these actually. Um, it those things are all based on reality. The amount of videos that I've now seen come out where it's like, I didn't realize so many other people had a guy just randomly play a guitar at them. And I was like, man. But yeah. I mean, yeah, this movie is definitely made for women. I've also seen many many men come out and talk about how good it was for them to see the arc that Ken went through. And they felt seen by this movie. I didn't have that much relation to Ken. I didn't feel much that way about the movie. I took it more as this is a great film for women, and I will never really relate to this film, but I understand that they will very, very much so.
Like I can 100% agree with that. This is definitely not a film for that we would understand.
Yeah, and I'm
Um,
not saying like women can't like this film. I'm just saying I'm just trying to share why, as a guy, I don't care for this film. It's kind of a slap in the face, at least to my face, for this film, and in the sense that I've been bombarded as a fan of many properties. One of the shirts that I'm wearing, Star Wars, DC, Marvel more recently have just been slapping me as a fan across the face. This just kind of seems like the same kind of thing, and I'm not even a fan of this. It just seems like another slap in the face. So I can see why it might not be, very well could not be, but a lot of the stuff that's similar to the properties that I used to like is in this. What else am I supposed to think? Granted, I thought you broke it down relatively well. I still don't agree with a lot of those points.
I mean, I never at
This
any
was
point felt
deliberate.
attacked.
I think it was deliberately done this way. If you see some of the interviews that they've had, they deliberately reference men as incompetent in this throughout their interviews. I mean, if you like it, feel free. You're allowed to have your own freaking opinion. No offense to you. I'm just,
riled up.
yeah.
All in all, I think the movie was very creative in its writing, but very streamlined for one specific group of people, um, which I understand. But to me personally, as a viewer of movies in general, I think movies, especially a movie titled Barbie, which is a just a world, just a movie that or a figure in general that just kind of is for children, mostly. It should be more have a bit more of a broader spec for not just one group or one half of the population, but for both halves of the population. Because I know there are men or other individuals. No, I think just men that have played with Barbies or dolls in general, that can feel connected to this movie because it is a Barbie movie. And I don't think it's really fair to them that it's not really helping them either. Barbie is a children's doll, and I didn't really see that throughout this movie. That's the only big problem I had with this. When I heard about the movie, I didn't look at any of the trailers. I never do. I like to go in there blind when I watch the movie. And I was expecting more of a children's movie, not a more of an adult um, teen adult movie. And that's the biggest gripe I have with this movie.
I understand that point. Yeah, I guess that one's I guess purely opinion. I don't have anything to refute that. It's just they decided the movie they were gonna make, and Barbie was the device.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It just seems
That
that
was
way
the
because
only thing. I mean, I just wasn't expecting that to come out from a Barbie titled movie. That one was the only part that really caught me off guard. I was expecting something a bit more. I don't really know. I don't know how to
more
categorize it
family
besides
oriented or
just
kid
Bar.
friendly to some degree, I would assume is what you're going for.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna be say Barbie style, like the rest of the animated Barbie movies. Just a live action version of it, kind of. That's just kind of what I expected.
And I'm not saying you can't have a movie for that is more centered on a specific section of audience that you're trying to go for. Like Andrew obviously pointed out that this is made for women. I'm not saying you can't have a movie for women, but it shouldn't be made at the detriment of alienating men, at least to not a, apparently not to a complete degree, but to a very proportional degree, as this does treat men as retarded. There's no getting around that fact.
I do, however, have a question on. So Ken's idea was it was what, patriotism, or what was it that he was
Patriarchy.
looking for? Patriarchy?
Patriarchy. Yeah.
When and where and how did he correlate that with horses in the beginning?
He was
I never.
Walking through the city and walking through the big bank building, he saw this map. He saw the cops riding the horses as he entered.
Yeah.
And then he saw this big kind of like motif and video of showing presidents, people riding horses and guns and soldiers. And that's where he
Okay.
got that idea. So from my understanding of the Ken story, his character in the beginning represented how a young boy interacts with the world and how we're kind of reliant on our mothers, and we are coddled as babies by women, and we get a lot of our value and attention and our love and affection from women. And that is what we kind of strive for as young boys. And then as soon as he got into the world, he got a different kind of attention. And instead of this loving feminine attention that he always desiring and trying to work for, that he wasn't getting as much with Barbie, he got this "you're a man, you rule the world" kind of attention, and he thought that was awesome. But the message is trying to say that like that's not really what patriarchy is about. Patriarchy itself isn't good, just the way that a matriarchy wouldn't be good. It has damaging effects for both men and women. It causes issues on both fronts. And he acknowledges that at the end when he said he lost interest in it as soon as he realized it wasn't just about horses. And so his arc wraps up when he's comes to terms with that he's not going to get his value as an individual from patriarchy and ruling the world and being a manly man. But he also can't get it from the validation of a woman. And that's where the "I am Kenough" kind of comes from.
Yeah, but
So
he was
that's
also, go on.
my understanding of it.
Yeah, but he was also looking for into getting just being equal to the Barbies. He wasn't trying to be or trying wasn't or, like he wanted to like essentially got to that point where he was just like I'm ruling over everything but he wanted to be equal to the Barbies because that's what it kind of goes over that a lot where they're just accessories to the Barbies where they're not treated as first class, they're not treated as citizens essentially, they're just treated as like accessories like a dog essentially. And at the end of the film that still doesn't happen, they're still treated like second class citizens, never gets resolved. And what they're doing
I don't.
I'd like to hear anything.
So their status in the city, yeah, that didn't really change their status.
Which is expected
In the beginning
every
of
society.
the first half of the movie, they like it's. I wouldn't say it's like they're oppressed. Like that's the life they wanted to live. They were happy just beaching all day, and just flexing, and that's what they wanted to do. And it's until they realized there was another option and they ran that through its course. I feel like if this movie was pulled out, we got to see more. I feel like it would have gone in the direction of a little bit more equality.
For
But
at least
I don't think they felt like second class citizens. They had their role in that they had the lives they wanted. They just weren't focused on.
For at least the stereotypical Ken, he definitely wanted something more, but he just didn't know what that was.
You mean Beach Ken?
Yeah,
I mean, he wanted
Gosling.
validation. He wanted to not be and Ken.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be secondary.
So he didn't get that until he went to the real world.
I also didn't understand the brainwashing mechanism
And I also don't understand
and
the
how
unbrainwashing mechanism either.
just the whole brainwashing mechanism seemed like, yes, Ken can go back and like talk to the other Kens and get them to do this, but to have all of the Barbies just do a 180 and have no explanation of why, just the Kens decided to, flex a little bit more today. That just seemed a little odd.
Yeah, that was more so a thing where don't think about it. We're just going to move the movie along because we're running out of time. That's what it more so felt like instead of a properly explained sort of scenario of how they got from point A to point B. Like it made sense for the Kens, didn't make any sense for the Barbies.
I just chalk it up to this is all Toyland and weird things are happening. It's not all logical. Like they don't have genitals.
Yeah, but they knew what they were to begin with. That's what really got me. I'm like, yeah, but you knew what they were to begin with, so does that mean there was a Barbie in a Ken?
No, I'm going to chalk that up to we just need to make this point, just to make this point. No reason was given.
Who knows?
They had no proper
I
reason.
will say probably my favorite character out of this whole movie was what's his name? Um,
Alan,
yeah, was
I
Alan.
like how they made them competent enough to fight for like the 5 minutes they need him, and then as soon as he's back in another scene, he can barely go over a fence.
That's a totally different hurdle in life. You can
Yeah.
you can fight, but going over a fence is completely different.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I just feel bad. All he wanted to do was leave.
Like this guy over here, he can run a 5K, doesn't even need water, but he can't tie his shoes. I mean, that's kind of a tough break.
That's what Velcro is for. That's what I keep telling myself.
Okay.
Anybody else got anything else to say about Barbie? The movie, not the doll, Zach.
Besides my still mint in the box Barbie that's now about 20 years old.
Yeah, that's probably a good, that's
Actually,
probably a
no, I
good
take that
sell.
back. It's actually, hold on, it's 20, almost 30 years old. I'm sorry, I had to do extra math.
It's probably a good price.
Mm-hmm,
Probably could get
mm-hmm.
a pretty
Still
penny
in the
for.
box, never been opened. It's just like, what's his name from Toy Story? Stinky Pete.
Oh yeah. Speaking of Toy
I couldn't
Story,
think of,
I think Toy Story did Barbie better than this movie.
didn't that Barbie actually do like combat in Toy Story?
The one in the third film, I think, did yeah. Barbie and Ken felt more real in the third film than they did in this film.
You know what? That's fair. Ken was all about like the fashion, and then Barbie came in and like destroyed him and then left.
But she was also about the fashion, but
No, she
at,
was,
at
but
at that point
she
where
had standards
yeah, well, at that point where all of a sudden everything went south and
or
she saw
values.
how her friends were getting treated, she then decided to stick with her friends instead of stick with Ken. So that's where that more so came into play. And Ken wasn't completely incompetent. He was just caught off guard when he was tied up. I guess my main concern with this, I guess a big concern I have with this film is that how seeing how deeply feministic this film was, or how deep it was in like rooted in feminism, and that this is the same person that's going to be directing Chronicles of Narnia over in Netflix. All right. Thank you for watching this episode of Galactic Reviews. Join us next time. We'll be watching the movie Oppenheimer. Until next time, we'll see you next time on Galactic Reviews.
I still want to
Well,
see
you'll
At least
that.
you gotta make,
well, you'll like
at least you gotta
Oppenheimer. It's
make
got
one.
Florence Pugh in it. So
I know. I know. I'm well aware. I am so well aware that she's in it.
Can't tell he's excited. So
No, I can't.
he's probably gonna give it a 10 out of 10. So
No, he'd give Florence Pugh a 10 out of 10, or 11 out of 10 if that was an option.
If I had 11 fingers, I'd be giving her 11 out of 10. Cut that one out.